You know exactly what you should do. You've researched it. You've planned it. You've thought about it from every angle, mapped the risks, considered the alternatives, and built a complete picture in your head, and you still haven't done it. That's not laziness. That's not fear. That's your intelligence working against you. And nobody is going to tell you that, because intelligence is supposed to be the answer. Nobody wants to admit it might be the problem. Here's the uncomfortable truth that the self-help industry will never sell you. The smarter you are, the more reasons your brain can generate for not acting. The more you understand a situation, the more failure scenarios you can imagine. The more options you can see, the harder it becomes to choose one. Average intelligence produces 1 or 2 reasons to hesitate. High intelligence produces 17, and your brain treats all 17 as equally valid threats. So you wait. You research more. You plan better. You get ready to get ready. And the person with half your analytical ability ships the product, takes the job, starts the business, and builds the life you designed perfectly in your head. Neuroscientists have a name for what's happening inside you. And once you understand the mechanism, you'll see it's not a character flaw. It's an architectural one. The good news is that architecture can be changed. The bad news is that it requires doing something that feels deeply wrong to a brain wired the way yours is. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why high-functioning intelligence produces paralysis, how your memory system is making it worse, and the 3-part override that breaks the loop permanently. Chapter 1. The Intelligence Trap. In 1956, psychologist George Miller at Princeton University published a paper that permanently changed how scientists understand the human mind. He called it the magical number 7. His finding was precise and brutal. The human working memory, the cognitive workspace where all active thinking happens, can hold between 5 and 9 pieces of information simultaneously. That's it. After that, the system overloads. Processing slows. Decisions become impossible. Here's where intelligence becomes a liability. A person with average analytical ability evaluates a decision using the information immediately available. 4 variables, maybe 6. They decide. A person with high analytical ability doesn't stop there. They identify second-order consequences. They model edge cases. They research adjacent domains. They generate more variables. Then more, until the working memory ceiling is hit, and the brain does the only thing it can do when overloaded. It stalls. It calls for more information. It schedules another review. It decides to decide later. This is not caution. This is cognitive overload wearing the costume of thoroughness. And the cruel irony is that the person experiencing it genuinely believes they are being responsible. More research feels like progress. Another planning session feels like preparation. The stall feels like diligence. It is none of those things. It is a brain that has generated more complexity than it can process and interpreted its own confusion as a signal to keep preparing. Psychologist Barry Schwartz named the consumer version of this in 2004. He called it the paradox of choice. More options don't produce better decisions. They produce decision paralysis and lower satisfaction with whatever is eventually chosen. The research is unambiguous. Past a certain threshold, more information makes decisions worse. Not better, worse. And high-intelligence individuals hit that threshold faster than anyone else because they generate the options themselves. Chapter 2. How your memory system is making this worse. Here's where it connects to everything you already know about how memory works. Your brain's prediction engine, the system that decides what to keep and what to discard, does not just operate on information. It operates on outcomes. Every time you researched a decision and didn't act, your brain filed that pattern. Research leads to more research. Planning leads to more planning. The loop is not just a habit, it's a memory trace. A neural pathway that has been walked so many times it has become the default route. This is the mechanism nobody explains. The retrieval system you use to access knowledge is the same system reinforcing your behavioral patterns. Every hesitation you've ever practiced has been stored, consolidated, and made easier to access next time. You're not just stuck in a thinking pattern, you're stuck in a memory pattern. And passive awareness of the problem, knowing intellectually that you overthink, does absolutely nothing to change it. You cannot think your way out of an overthinking problem using the same brain that created it. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio at the University of Southern California spent years studying patients with damage to the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for complex reasoning and planning. His finding was the most counterintuitive result in modern neuroscience. Patients with impaired rational thinking made faster decisions, and in many domains, better ones. Because the machinery generating infinite alternative scenarios was offline, the signal was cleaner, the action was faster. He called it the somatic marker hypothesis. Emotion and intuition don't corrupt rational decisions. In the absence of clear information dominance, they complete them. The smart person's problem is not a lack of intuition. It's that their analytical machinery is loud enough to drown it out entirely. Hit subscribe before you overthink it, because Chapter 3 is the part that actually makes you dangerous. Chapter 3, the three-part override. The solution to analysis paralysis is not to think less. It is to think differently, act first, and use your intelligence after the fact, rather than before it. This will feel wrong. Do it anyway. Part 1. Set a decision deadline that is shorter than feels comfortable. Not a reasonable amount of time, an unreasonable one. Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, not a man known for intellectual timidity, built his entire decision framework around what he called two-way door decisions. If the decision can be reversed or adjusted after the fact, it must be made fast. Deliberation is reserved only for truly irreversible choices. And he was explicit about why. Most decisions made slowly are made poorly, because the added time produces added doubt rather than added clarity. The correct question is not, do I have enough information? The correct question is reversible? If yes, move. Now, the information you get from acting will always be more accurate than the information you get from imagining. Part 2. Constrain the variables deliberately and artificially. Not because additional variables don't exist. They do, but because your brain needs a workable number of inputs to function. 3 criteria, maximum for any decision. Write them down before you research. Commit to them before you begin. If a new variable emerges during research that isn't one of your 3 criteria, it does not count. This is not intellectually dishonest. This is recognizing that your working memory has a ceiling and choosing to work within it rather than pretending the ceiling isn't there. Part 3. Use your memory system against the paralysis. You already know that retrieval practice builds stronger neural pathways than passive review. Apply this to action, not just information. Every small decision made without extended deliberation builds a retrieval trace for decisive behavior. Start with decisions that feel almost too small to count. Choose the restaurant in 30 seconds. Reply to the email immediately. Pick the projects and begin. Each one is not just a decision. It is a practice retrieval of the behavior of acting. The pathway gets thicker. The default route changes. You are not building confidence. You are building a memory trace for motion that eventually becomes faster to access than the memory trace for hesitation. Here's what all 3 parts actually mean. Intelligence is not the enemy. The misapplication of intelligence is. The brain that can model 17 failure scenarios can also model exactly how a decision gets corrected after the fact. The same capacity that generates paralysis can generate recovery plans, adaptation strategies, and mid-course corrections. The smartest move a high-intelligence person can make is to use that intelligence after action rather than as a substitute for it. Research after you start. Plan after you commit. Optimize after you ship. The people who told you to think before you act were right about one thing. Thinking matters. They just got the sequence backwards. Act. Then think harder than anyone else about how to make what you've already started succeed. That's not recklessness. That's the only sequence that produces results instead of perfect, unfinished plans. The intelligence trap is not a life sentence. It is a default setting, and defaults can be changed. But here's the problem though. Breaking the paralysis loop gets you moving. But moving in the wrong direction compounds faster than staying still. That's why I made this video on how to identify the decisions that actually matter, the rare choices that determine everything else, so that when you do act, you're acting on something worth the momentum. Watch it next.